All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Dan Fulis, Facility Manager at the Cedar Rapids Corn Plant. Looks like we got a good group of people on today. I hope all of you are staying safe and healthy. Today we will be talking about our construction plans for the rail yard. This is the second session, and we will continue to meet throughout the phases of this project. So at the end of this presentation, we'll have some time for comments as well. If you look at the agenda, we're going to spend a couple minutes. I think some are new to WebEx, and to make sure this time is productive, we're going to go through how this meeting is structured, a little bit of ground rules of how we're going to engage today. You can see in there, Eric is going to spend some time a little bit going through the last meeting, some of the changes to the plan, the feedback that we got, make sure everybody's aware with what those were. He's going to go through the construction schedule and some of the major steps. And then at the end, I'll go through a little bit of the project timeline, where we are today and when we expect the rail yard to come online. And then at the end, like I said, there's going to be some comments. So thanks again for joining us today, and I'm going to pass it to Andrew to go through today's meeting.
Thank you. We will start and end this meeting on time. The meeting will be recorded and available for viewing on the City Development Services Cargill Rail Yard webpage and the Cargill Rail Yard website. We will focus on the meeting objective and adhere to the agenda. We will ask that all present be respectful of the meeting objective and all participants. All lines will be muted during the presentation, and we will open the lines up upon request for suggestions and comments on the design elements. One person will speak at a time, as recognized by the operator. The person speaking will be given 3 minutes to provide comments on the design to allow for others to speak. Before speaking, introduce yourself on the call, and then share your design suggestions and or comments. If your comment and or suggestions are not design related, the operator will politely acknowledge this and ask you to provide comments only about the design elements. If you choose not to comply, the operator will mute your line. Be concise and respectful of others wishing to comment on the design elements that are suggested. Comments and suggestions that are not heard during the meeting can be sent to cedar_rapids@cargill.com. Direct media inquiries to Kelly_Sheehan, that's SHEEHAN @cargill.com.
Good afternoon, evening. This is Eric Rudham. I'm the build project manager for this project. Just at the beginning, wanted to talk about some of the changes and updates that have occurred from January up until today. One of the things that we discussed in January was the berm design. We have decided to straighten out the berm along Otis Avenue. So instead of having the dog leg in the berm, we will have it straight along Otis Avenue, giving a more uniform look. This also creates additional detention volume in the conservation area, as well as reducing the amount of dirt that we need to bring into the rail yard for construction. So by adding or by relocating the berm, the stormwater detention area on site, so we're defining that as the volume of detention on site within the 100-year floodplain is 87% greater than it is as the property exists today. So one thing that came up last time was just being able to see some of what we're talking about. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Previously, this is the berm along the north. Previously, it took a dog leg here and stayed only on Cargill or future Cargill property. We've worked with the city and come up with an easement that would allow us to construct the berm straight along Otis Avenue Southeast to give it a more uniform look on Otis Avenue. And then the berm ends as the land goes uphill towards Cole Street, Otis Avenue, and Otis Road intersections. The berm just kind of ends level into the hill. So just wanted to show that in more detail here, what we meant by straightening out the berm. One of the discussion that we had at the last meeting was, can we add native shrubs to the top of the berm? So we have added native shrubs to the top of the berm. A request was made, can we make sure that all of the species that we use are Iowa native species? We used 2 separate lists to verify that we are planting appropriate trees. Iowa State University, the extension system, has a list of native and suggested tree species. Trees Forever out of Marion, Iowa, also has a list of desired tree species for this area of Iowa. All of the species that we're going to plant are on one or both of those lists. Another thing that we talked about in the last meeting was screening between the fishery and the rail yard. I'll go into a little detail on that. We'll put these plans on the City of Cedar Rapids website so that you can look at what a JV tree is versus a TC or a QP. But you can see we've added screening along the southwestern edge of the rail yard. Remember, there's existing trees in here that are remaining to improve the screening between the rail yard and the Prairie Park fishery. We've made a couple changes to the office building that we're going to put on site. We are removing the office portion of the building. So instead of office and a storage building, this will be only a storage building. Having said that, we will still maintain the aesthetics of it to make sure that it fits it on that plot of land and isn't an eyesore. Instead of constructing the office at the rail yard, we will be constructing an office building at the existing corn plant on Otis Road for our rail moving employees to work out of. There's a question at the last meeting on what are we going to do with the property the 2 properties that we've purchased in the neighborhood. We do not intend to rezone the residential neighborhood properties. Currently purchased properties will be resold as residential properties at a later date. On the area lighting plan, we have eliminated the large stadium style lights. So we heard, we want this as unobtrusive as possible. Those lights were on 30-foot poles. So we have removed those stadium style lights from the plan. At one of the meetings in December of 2019 at the City Council, there were some questions on what can we do to reduce the impact on nighttime pollinator species. After doing some research on that, it seems like some of the best evidence right now is if the outside lights are off by about midnight, the studies that I saw showed that nighttime pollinator habitat or nighttime pollinator activity was not affected compared to completely dark skies. So we will minimize the amount of lighting that we need on our building to as little as possible, and where possible, we'll make them motion activated so we don't have lights on all night just for the sake of having lights on. Getting into the construction schedule and a little more information, our construction will begin in April with tree removal and then clearing and grubbing the land. So clearing and grubbing is removing the existing vegetation, removing the top about 12 inches of topsoil to get us down to good material that we can start working off of. The topsoil will be stored on site in a pile so that we can spread the topsoil later to grow stuff on it. The prime contractor that we have chosen is a company called PCI out of Rhinebeck, Iowa. That's Peterson Contractors Incorporated. They are going to be our heavy civil contractor. You may have seen their name or their logo on heavy equipment on the highways. They're a very frequent contractor for the state of Iowa. Currently, they're working on the I-380 interchange in Coralville. So if you ever drive by that area, almost all of the heavy dirt moving equipment is owned by PCI there. They will only be working between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. and only on Monday through Saturday. I don't know if they're going to be working every week, Monday through Saturday, but at the most, these are their limits of when they will be working. We've held a safety orientation and a pre-mobilization meeting with PCI as a contractor, and then we'll be doing a site-specific safety orientation with all of their employees working on the project. That will also include all of the subcontractors to PCI, making sure that everyone who's working on the project has been through a safety orientation with us. All of the trucks that are entering the site will all be road legal weights and sizes, or permitted loads if it's not possible to reduce the weight. So an example, some of the heavy earth moving equipment that we'll use, it's just not practical to take those apart and get them to a road legal status. So those will be permitted loads with the state, the county, the city as needed. But the trucks that will be coming with materials will all be road legal. Dirt for grading will primarily come from the Cargill plant on Otis Road. We have a significant amount of earth and clay over on the west side. Some of that has come from the previous earthen berms on the west side of the facility that we built for flood protection. We currently have construction slated to start pretty quickly on site. We're building a new building, as well as there's flood wall construction going on, so we'll take that dirt. And then the city also has some projects that they have some dirt that they needed to dispose of. We will be taking that dirt as well, so that they don't have to pay to dispose of it. All of these trucks will come from the plant down Otis Road into the rail yard. When we start bringing in sub-ballast and ballast, so that's rock that you would see on top of the rail tracks, that'll come from quarries in the greater Cedar Rapids area. These trucks will come in from Highway 51, either from the north or the south, depending on which quarry that they're coming in, and then come in via Bertram Road and Otis Road. The construction entrances to the property will be on Cole Street, as well as Otis Avenue Southeast. From talking to PCI, it sounds like the majority of the trucks coming from the east, coming from Highway 151, will enter on Otis Avenue Southeast. And that's just to reduce and eliminate the 90-degree turn from Otis Road to Cole Street. By not having the tight turn, it'll reduce wear and tear, it'll reduce traffic delays, and overall it'll improve logistical issues. For a high-level schedule, dirt work will occur from mid-April to the July timeframe. There'll be distinct periods where more material is brought into site. We will not have heavy truck traffic every day throughout this entire project. It'll ebb and flow as materials needed to come onto site. We'll probably start with a fair amount of dirt coming onto the site. Then trucking will slow down as we move that dirt around the site as we grade it. Once we start to have some final grades in, then we'll increase the sub-ballast trucks, and the sub-ballast trucks will come in until we have everything up at the final sub-ballast grade. After this, we'll start rail work in the July through October timeframe. And again, the first stuff we'll bring in will be equipment to install the rail tracks and ties themselves. And then when we're ready to start getting the rail tracks up at final grade, we'll bring in the ballast so that we can tamp it and complete the rails. The plan is we will begin working on the berm on the north side of the property as quickly as we can. The quicker that we can get visual and audible screening up there, the better off this will go. So we will be prioritizing that as we start hauling dirt. The tree and shrub planting is planned to occur this fall, as well as most of the seed planting. Depending on when some of the final grading is done, if it happens too late in the fall for us to get anything on there, we'll come back in spring of 2022, so about a year from right now, to do final plantings, just so that we can make sure that we get stuff planted in the proper weather conditions.
All right, so just wanted to walk through the timeline. So this is pretty similar for the folks that maybe were on the last call. Not much has changed here, but want to continue to put this up to keep everybody aware. So pre-construction news is what we're doing today. We got execution of the development agreement, including property closings. The intent right now is that will happen next month. We got the construction beginning sometime in the end of next month. The next time that we would likely get together to talk about how things are going in mid-construction will be somewhere in the July timeframe. Then we start to look forward into when does it complete. Right now, there's a lot of variables that go into it of when this could actually get completed and online, start operating, but right now our best guess is somewhere in that November timeframe. And then we wanted to add potentially an extra meeting in here. As you can see, we had the early design, we have the pre-construction, we have the mid-construction, and then we wanted to potentially, what we're looking at right now, somewhere in the time frame, depending on when startup is, to have a post-construction, post-operation feedback session to hear how's it going. What are you guys seeing? What are you guys hearing? What are you guys thinking about? Any feedback or comments that we can use to help us operate this facility with the least amount of impact that we can. So that's the timeline that we have today. All right, we can move to the next slide. All right, so pretty short and sweet. These are the facts. This is what we know at this point to the best of our knowledge. So we just wanted to open it up for some comments. Andrew, you want to let people know how to queue up?
Certainly. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question or comment, please press *1 on your telephone. To withdraw your question or comment, you may press the # key. Once again, that's then 1. Our first question or comment comes from the line of Joe Schroeder. Your line is now open. Pardon me, Joe, please check your mute button.
There was a comment made earlier about planting plants, and I appreciate that. I'm wondering if it could be clarified to say plant and maintain native plants and screening plants, because it's going to be important. It's one thing to plant, but it's another to maintain them long term.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I do appreciate that comment. Yeah, absolutely. We will plant them and maintain them. We'll work with Pollinator. One of the companies that we're going to be working with to get seeds is called Xerxes. I guess they're one of the prime pollinator seed providers in Iowa, so we can work with them on best practices to maintain, the pollinator habitats as well as maintain the what we do plant. We talked very briefly about on the north side having an easement going into the property that the city will continue to keep within city ownership. That easement does specifically detail out the maintenance of the berm and the plantings on their property. So it's specifically spelled out for this parcel B, but absolutely in parcel A for what we own, we will continue to maintain the plantings and work on them, as Xerxes and the professionals detail out.
Thank you. And as a reminder, if you have a question or comment, please press star 1. Our next question or comment comes from the line of Catherine Hogg. Your line is now open.
Hogue, I wonder if you are going to do a search for turtles, foxes, and other animals that will already be active in April and help to evacuate them before you start to bulldoze them. I am wondering if you can give a number of truckloads of dirt that will be coming now, or an area that is needing to be filled at this point, since the last estimate was about 10,000 truckloads. And the least amount of impact would be to not build it. So please consider that.
I don't have a specific answer right now on finding what's already there. I'll have to talk to our environmental group as well as PCI to see what is frequently done and what can be done. The amount of truckloads, that 10,000 that you referenced, I have not recalculated that number since we changed the berm, so it'll be a little less than that. But if you want to look at orders of magnitude, it's in that in that order of magnitude.
Thank you. And our next question or comment comes from the line of Rob Hogue. Your line is now open.
Okay. Well, thank you. As you all know, I think this is an absolutely appalling project that the city has approved. And it really is kind of, in my view, despicable that they would violate their land use plans, their flood plans, and do this to the neighborhood, to a prairie in the floodplain, to the Prairie Park fishery, and all the things they had planned to do over the last 20 years. But if it's going to go forward, one of my questions was about the number of trucks. What have you done to ensure that those trucks will come in safely with the children who use and visit the Indian Creek Nature Center? I would also like to know, from the prior meeting, you'd mentioned you would be applying for a stormwater permit, and I did not hear that on the initial question. So the two questions are, for the roughly 10,000 trucks that you anticipate bringing into this site, what are you doing to make sure that children and other users of the nature corridor and the nature center will be safe? And then the second question is, have you applied for a stormwater permit, and what is the status on that? Thank you.
Yep. So on the truck safety, one of the parts is just with our safety orientation. Obviously, we're going to talk about what our expectations are on site. But a big portion of that is what are our expectations when you're driving to and from this site. They may have PCI on the side of their trucks, but they're absolutely representing Cargill. So we have discussed, we've discussed with PCI management. We will discuss with every single driver that this is an area where on 151, you're probably not going to expect to see any bicyclists or people walking along the side of the road. But as you get closer to this property, you may see them. So we are reinforcing our expectations that all of the laws are followed, that they're courteous to everyone else on the road, and when in doubt, we will slow down, we will stop to make sure that it's safe for people that are in the neighborhood. We will have zero tolerance for them violating the laws or not following those safety practices. For the SWIP, we have submitted public notice for the SWIP. We're finalizing the paperwork to submit that to the IDNR, as well as the City of Cedar Rapids has a stormwater permit, so we are finalizing those, and those will be submitted prior to construction. And the SWIP is the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, for those that don't know the lingo. It's a plan that needs to be done to show how you'll manage and not degrade stormwater anytime you disturb more than 1 acre of soil, which this project is part of the more than 1 acre. So it's if you want to look it up, it's under Iowa General Permit number 2.
Thank you. And I'm showing no further questions or comments. I apologize. We just had a question or comment queue up, and that is from Joe Schroeder. Your line is now open.
I have 2 questions I wanted to follow up with. One, and maybe you've addressed this before, and I'm sorry I missed it. Are you going to be doing some railroad work improvement on Otis Road near the fishery entrance? That's my first question. Second question is, specifically, how did the pandemic or the derecho impact this timeline, or has this been the original timeline from Cargill's perspective all along? So specifically, what impact did pandemic and derecho have on the timeline?
Yeah,
Joe,
thanks, Joe. Go ahead, Jen.
I can take the answers on those questions. So, Joe, if you remember the quiet crossing, that is still happening. That is a city-initiated project. Cargill is going to help fund that. So the intent is that will be a quiet zone or quiet crossing. As far as derecho and the pandemic and how it affected, I don't know that it had a significant effect. There was a lot of milestones that had to be met to kind of get us to this point, to where we are today. And we didn't really have it completely figured out exactly what the timeline was going to look like until the last couple months. There's a lot that goes into it, so I don't think it had a giant effect by any means.
The biggest thing for
question, Joe, I don't know if that answered it or not, but
the biggest thing is not being able to do construction, earth moving, and grading when it's frozen. So, you know, had we been able to start 6 months ago, 4 months ago, 4 months ago would not have helped us at all based on the weather.
Thank you. And our next question or comment comes from the line of John Schreiner. Your line is now open.
This is Barbara Sperry on John Schreiner's phone. As far as the storage unit that's going to be down there instead of a office, is it going to be larger in size, and what exactly is going to be stored there? And why are there no sidewalks put along both sides here? And if this rail yard doesn't go through here, are you committed to continuing with the pollinator zone on the farm site? Can we get a commitment you will still do that if this site doesn't go forward? That's the end of my question. Thank you.
On the storage building question specifically, that's going to be for storing hand tools that they need down there to tighten rails or maintain rails. It'll give them the place to store a truck, a snowplow, a snow blower. we'll be able to store small amounts of chemicals that they'll need, spray lubricants, general maintenance equipment for rail yard stuff. It will not be a storage building for plant-based stuff or other random stuff. The building overall will be about the same size as it had been originally planned. I think it's a few feet smaller. It's not a warehouse-sized building. It's not going to be used for stuff that's not directly related to daily operations and maintenance of the rail yard. It'll have a bathroom in it. It'll have a small break space in it so that they can, get out of the cold, get out of the heat in the summer. But if you're thinking it'll be a major warehouse, it will not be a major warehouse. We already have an agreement not to have hazardous materials in rail cars or bulk amounts of hazardous materials at the rail yard site itself. There's an exception for small amounts of lubricants and stuff that's needed for daily maintenance. On the sidewalk question, we are working with the city and we're following their guidelines and requirements for when and where we install sidewalks. So, and then the last question was on the pollinator habitat. Dan, do you have an answer? Can you tackle that?
Yeah, so the agreement, the way the development is drafted up, that these are going to be done simultaneously. So as we take ownership of the property off of Stewart Road, the city would take ownership of the farm parcels. So in the future, when this rail yard gets developed and operational, the city will begin construction of the pollinator zone right there on the farm.
And I'm showing we have a follow-up question or comment from the line of Rob Hogue. Your line is now open.
Thank you. Eric, I believe you said in your comments that you anticipated that in a 100-year flood, the property after the prairie has been demolished and the construction is done will have a larger storage capacity in the 100-year flood. I have a question about a repeat of the 2008 flood. Have you done the calculation or modeled what that will look like in the event of in the occurrence of a repeat of the 2008 flood? And I also wonder if you have what your plans are for addressing major flooding when something like that would occur.
I do not have an answer for you on anything greater than the 100-year flood. I've not had that calculation done, but I can look into it with our engineering firm. Sorry, I'm just taking a note. Your question on what would we do in the event of a major flood, if I can break that into two sections. One, in the event of a 100-year flood, from talking to some of the neighbors and looking at the dirt work and the existing topography, the water first comes and backs up through the culverts that are here that drains most of the neighborhood into the fishery and into the river. For a 100-year flood, we are able to put they're called big bags. It's a sandbag designed for flood protection. We'll be building a system to allow us to put big bags here that will protect the rail yard as well as protect the neighborhood. It first comes up through a ditch here and comes into this neighbor's backyard and then spreads from there. In the event of a 100-year flood, we will be able to stop it right here at these culverts with having pumps on the dry side to take care of any precipitation that brings water onto the dry side of the berm. in the event of a greater than 100-year flood, the rail tracks are essentially at the 100-year flood elevation. It's pretty close. So I'm just going to say that they're right at the 100-year flood elevation. In the event of a 500-year flood, all of the rail tracks from the Otis Road crossing up by the plant, the whole way south along Fir Avenue would all go over the tracks at the same time. In the event of that type of a flood, we would evacuate the rail car or the rail cars from the yard. We'd take anything out of the storage building down there, try to empty that out. And at that point, there's not much we can do other than wait for the water to come up, wait for the water to go down, and then make any repairs as needed. From talking to our experts, as long as we don't have flowing water over our tracks, we typically do not see troubles. And from what I've heard in the 2008 flood, it was the water came up, the water went down, but there wasn't flow in the neighborhood. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. And I'm showing we have a follow-up question or comment from John Schrainer. Your line is now open.
Yes, for that quiet zone, have permits already been applied for that, and will they need to be widen Otis Road in that area? What impact will that have as far as the road, and will that be operational at the time that the rail yard becomes operational? Thank you.
Eric, you know the answers to those questions?
Yeah, I was going to say that's just within the control of the city. Our development agreement states that we will reimburse them for up to $400,000 in costs of converting that to a quiet zone. Their initial estimates are in the $250,000 to $300,000 range. So we were confident that we were having enough reimbursement that they would be able to achieve it within the cost of what we'll reimburse. As for an update on that, I do not have an update on that. We are not involved with the exception of reimbursing the costs.
And as far as why isn't there going to be a quiet zone down by your plant? Because there's just being additional traffic there, and I know people down in Newbo by 12th Avenue are requesting a quiet zone down there.
I believe the city.
Yep, I can take that, Eric. Yep, I met with some city employees a month and a half ago, and they are looking at that. That is a potential option. One of the things that I know has kind of been a priority, something that they want to accomplish, is get quiet zones all the way from Cargill all the way through the city. So I'm not sure where it's going to end up, but I know there has been some conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm showing no further questions or comments. Okay, I'm showing we do have a follow-up question or comment from John Schrainer. Your line is open.
Hi, this is John Schreiner. What are your intentions north of Otis Avenue? You own two properties there on Otis Avenue now, and there's one going up for sale. Are you going to move anything at all on the north side of Otis Avenue?
The properties
John,
that we
question.
Go ahead, Dan.
Oh. Yeah, no, John, good question. I know we committed to having some answers for you on this stuff. So our intention is to resell the property that we purchased up there. Eric kind of went through that a little bit at the beginning. So we'll resell that, and we have no intentions of moving any of the rail yard or storage buildings or office or anything on the north side of Otis Road.
What is the purpose of buying?
Well, somebody is trying to buy my house. That is have anything to do with Cargill?
It does not.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm showing no further questions or comments.
If there are any further questions that come up, please feel free to email cedar_rapids@cargill.com. That does come to me, and I am able to see that and answer questions via that. So please remember that email address.
Yeah, I'm sure we have a follow-up question or comment from John Schreiner. Your line is open.
We were wondering, why did you buy the house if you're not going to use it?
It was a business decision that we made, and any other purchases will be business decisions. And that's the only reason, nothing specific.
You're definitely not going to change your mind. You're not going to come north of Otis Avenue.
We are not. With the operation of the rail yard, with storage or office, like we said before, our intention is any properties that we would purchase or have purchased, we are not looking to rezone them. They will stay residential.
What you asked is great.
And we have a follow-up question or comment from John Schreiner. Your line is open.
Question is, will you be buying any property north of where, other than the city property that's in question right now, will you be buying any property north of that, for example, houses on the south side of 24th Avenue?
On the south side of 4th Avenue. John?
No, 24th Avenue.
24th. Is that the street just right in front, kind of from where your house is looking down the street? Is that 24th?
No, the 24th is the one that is the single, the lots that are just south of 24th Avenue on the south side, 24th Street, excuse me. The houses that are on the south side of 24th Street that are just north of the property that you are attempting to acquire. Will you be buying any of those houses or attempting to buy any of those houses?
When a house comes up or a property comes up, we'll look at it. We'll make a decision based on it, but as we said before, our intention would be not to rezone, to change our plans, current plans of the rail yard because of that decision.
But a follow-up question is then, will you make a commitment not to attempt to buy houses that are on the north side of the city property that you are acquiring with this transaction?
Yeah, John, I can't really make a commitment that we're not going to buy any properties, and I'm not exactly sure which area that you're talking about specifically. If we were go ahead.
How come you cannot make a commitment to not buy property in the rest of the Rompot area, including the land that is very right across the property line of the city property that you are acquiring? Why will you not make a commitment to not purchase and not desire to purchase and not to deal? Why will you not make that kind of commitment if you are not in planning to come forward going towards the north in the rest of Rompot or any other portions of Rompot?
Yeah, if you remember this, there is an easement on this property that does not allow the rail yard operation to continue to grow anywhere near the north. So we're pretty well, and this was something that we wanted to do to give confidence that the rail yard isn't going to grow. The existing footprint, or right close, you can see the pictures that's up there. What's in yellow and what's in brown is in that conservation easement. So we will not be growing any of that operation. If we intend to purchase property, that's going to be for different reasons than operation of a rail yard.
So you're not willing to make a commitment not to expand other parts of Cargill other than the rail yard north of that property the property that you are acquiring now from the city that was originally donated to an individual, donated to the city for a soccer field.
So yeah, as I said, John, we're not looking to expand Cargill's operation into the community. So anything that we purchase would be maintained as residential. So I cannot make a commitment about not purchasing, but what I can tell you is our intention is that we are not going to rezone any of the properties we've already purchased or plan to purchase or will purchase in the future.
Any of the properties that you guys are reselling, are you guys putting conditions on those as you resell them?
We have not got to the point of reselling them, so I have no idea what the real estate regulations or what we have to do to sell this property. So we'll work through that once we get to that point.
And just a comment would be, it would have been nice if it was considered for the naming rights. As you are aware of, that property was bought from the Seymour's Stephenson. He had a condition to name that property park after his daughter. And it would have been nice if you guys would have gave that consideration to renaming the pollinator zone down there after, or letting him have the rights versus taking over that. Just a comment. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Jeremiah.
Thank you. We have a question or comment from the line of Patrick Shannon. Your line is now open.
Yes, this is Patty Shannon, and I have a question. When the field is dry like it is now, and something would happen, do you have anything for fire protection in plan?
That's a good question. That's not something that we've thought of or reviewed. Something that I'm going to make a note of, and we will follow up on that, Betty.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a follow-up question or comment from Rob Hogue. Your line is now open.
In reference to the questions about what Cargill is or is not buying, I just want to say that I recommended it that the city, if they had to do this, should establish a fund of $5 million to buy people out for relocation expenses, for soundproofing houses, for protecting property values. And you can hear from the other neighbors what the concern and the uncertainty about what is happening behind the scenes. And I don't blame Cargill. You can say that you're making whatever business decisions you need to make, and I don't blame you on that, because I know there are some people who Cargill ought to buy out if you're going to do this project. But I blame the city for not providing some guidelines for how this is going to happen. This is tormenting people who live in this neighborhood, who bought houses in this neighborhood relying on the city's land use plan. And now we have to have an industrial rail yard in our neighborhood, apparently. we're going to have 10,000 trucks, roughly, coming down our roads this summer. This is going to be absolute misery. So all I would say is, Cargill, if you need to buy people out and keep them residential, you should buy them out. But the lack of transparency is very difficult on those of us who have lived here in reliance on the city's land use plan. It is a total failure of city government to put residents through this kind of misery on a project like this, to betray the land use plans, and then turn around and not tell us anything about what is going on with those purchases. And again, I don't blame you, Cargill. You're a private company. You don't need to disclose your business to us. Although I did think, like in the pending lawsuit.
Hey, Rob, I'm sorry. We're trying to keep this on to comments specifically about the construction of the rail yard. So I don't mean to cut you off, but please keep it on the topic of the construction.
Look, you can cut me off, but clearly neighbors want to know what the heck is going on with buyouts. We clearly want to know that, and that's related to the project. And the fact that the city has not provided leadership on this to tell us what the heck is going on is a huge failure on their part. Thank you.
I'm showing no questions or comments at this time.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate the comments today. And as I said, we'll be back together a couple more times to talk about the process, where we're at, get feedback. And as Eric said, if you got any further questions, please put them out there. We'd like to answer them, get the best of our knowledge at this point to share with you what we know. So send them on to the website. Very good. Well, Andrew, I think we're done for today. Thank you much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's town hall. Thank you for participating, and you may now disconnect. 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 Disconnect.